group exercise class, we were working on hip flexion strengthening, and we were working on holding it up and holding the leg out to really strengthen this hip flexor muscle in here. And the gal that was standing next to me, she kept grabbing her hip, and it was cramping and hurting, and it was obvious that she was getting a spasm in her hip flexor, but for her it was her tensor fascia latae muscle. Now, if you have knee pain and it's been identified, or you've thought that maybe it's your IT band coming down your leg or the side of your thigh, that IT band originates from the tensor fascia latae coming off the front of your hip. And it does that function as an accessory hip flexor. So the best thing to do would not be to keep strengthening it and pushing it into spasm, but you need to give that a little bit of a break, and you want to get in there and try to release that muscle spasm so then you can get back to the strengthening and working on it again. And one of the best ways to get into the tensor fascia latae is with a tennis ball or racquetball. So we're going to take the tennis ball and we're going to put that directly into the tensor fascia latae muscle. And the tensor fascia latae muscle originates here from the front of your pelvis at the anterior superior iliac spine. It comes down and transitions into the iliotibial band, or your ITB, coming down the side of your leg, and that attaches just below the knee on the outside here. So if you have knee pain, that's often a contributing factor. And one of the things you want to make sure you address is your tensor fascia latae muscle up here proximally, because that is the muscle belly, and that's where I think you're going to get the greatest release of tension coming down the side of your leg. So in order to locate where to put it, you're going to find that ASIS, or anterior superior iliac spine, on the front of the pelvis. That's a bony point here. And then the greater trochanter on the side of your hip, over your hip joint. And the ball goes right there in between the two. That's the fleshy part of the muscle. Here you can see the TFL originating from the ASIS at the front of the pelvis, and the IT band coming off of the tensor fascia latae down the leg and inserting just below the knee on the tibia of the muscle. And you're going to come right down onto your side, directly onto the muscle. And you can lie all the way down and then fine-tune by rolling slightly forward or slightly back until you find a point where there's a greater amount of intensity. But it still needs to be in a therapeutic zone. So you want to be able to sustain that pressure for several minutes. You should be able to breathe normally, you should be able to talk, and you should be able to maintain the pressure. If it's so intense that you can't do that, you need to find a softer surface. So you could do it on the bed, or you could put down a softer cushion onto the floor, and that's a way to grade the amount of pressure. Now, if you have a hard time getting down on the floor, if you have problems with your knees, your hips, or strength, and you want to just still do it in the bed, but maybe the bed's too soft, you can increase the intensity by putting a cutting board down on the bed and then put the ball on that and then lie on it. Now, an alternative to going on your side would be to do it on your stomach. And you're going to take the ball into the same location, just below the ASIS, or that bony point on the front of your hip, and then you're going to come right down onto your stomach. I like to flex the opposite leg here in order to shift my weight over to the left and increase my contact pressure onto the ball. And then you're going to just roll a little bit up or down, left or right, until you find a point that you have a greater amount of intensity. And then you want to lie there. And if you're going to lay there for a few minutes, you may as well get comfortable. And just breathe into it. Visualize that muscle relaxing and letting go. And then once the pain starts to subside and starts to relax, then you know you're done with that point. Now, you have two choices. You can either stop if you need to get going, or you can just shift the ball slightly and find another point and continue to work your way through that entire muscle, and maybe even around to the side a little bit more, and work out all those tight areas on your hip.